The setup Marcus Chen adjusted his Rolex as the valet took his keys, flashing a practiced smile at Vanessa Pierce beside him. She looked stunning in her designer dress, exactly the kind of woman who belonged on his arm at an event like this. The Meridian Gallery's opening was the social event of the season, and Marcus intended to make an impression. "This place is incredible," Vanessa breathed, her phone already out to capture content for her followers. "My audience is going to love this." Marcus nodded approvingly. Everything about Vanessa screamed success. Her curated Instagram presence, her connections to fashion brands, her effortless sophistication. She was nothing like Riley. The thought of his ex-girlfriend sent a familiar mixture of satisfaction and irritation through him. Riley Morrison, with her paint-stained hands and impossible dreams of becoming a recognized artist. He'd spent 2 years watching her struggle, listening to her talk about her vision, while she barely made rent working at a coffee shop. When he'd finally ended things 3 months ago, it had felt like cutting dead weight. They entered the gallery, and Marcus immediately began working the room. He knew several people here, tech investors and entrepreneurs from his circle. This was his world now, not cramped studio apartments and thrift store furniture. "Marcus Chen," a jovial voice called out. It was David Huang, a venture capitalist Marcus had been courting for months. "Good to see you, man." "And who is this lovely lady?" "Vanessa Pierce," Marcus said smoothly, placing a possessive hand on her waist. "She's a fashion influencer, over 200,000 followers." As Vanessa and David exchanged pleasantries, Marcus scanned the crowd. That's when he saw her. Riley stood near the far wall, examining a large abstract painting. She wore a simple black dress, her dark hair pulled back in the messy bun she'd always favored. Even from across the room, Marcus could see the paint stains on her fingers. Some things never changed, something twisted in his chest, an emotion he couldn't quite name. She looked different somehow, more composed, more present. Then she laughed at something the person next to her said, and Marcus felt an irrational spike of annoyance. "Babe, you okay?" Vanessa touched his arm. "Perfect," Marcus said, making a decision. "Actually, I just spotted someone I know. Come on, let me show you around." He guided Vanessa through the gallery, deliberately choosing a path that would take them past Riley. He wanted her to see what she'd lost, to understand that he'd moved on to something better. As they approached, Marcus made sure his laugh was loud, his posture confident. Riley glanced up, and their eyes met. For a moment, something flickered across her face, but then she simply smiled politely and turned back to the painting. That wasn't the reaction Marcus had expected. He'd anticipated hurt, maybe jealousy. Her indifference stung more than he cared to admit, and it only made him more determined to get a reaction. The humiliation. Marcus steered Vanessa toward the section where Riley stood, his voice deliberately louder than necessary. "You know, the problem with modern art galleries is they let just about anyone exhibit these days. No standards anymore?" Vanessa giggled, though she seemed slightly uncomfortable. "You're so discerning, Marcus." "That's what I love about you." Riley didn't turn around. But Marcus noticed her shoulders tense slightly. Good. He wanted her to hear this. "Seriously, though," Marcus continued, stopping directly behind Riley to examine the painting she'd been viewing. "Look at this piece. It's so derivative, so amateur. Someone probably spent months on this, thinking they were creating something profound, when really it's just emotional nonsense splashed on canvas." The painting was actually striking, a turbulent mix of deep blues and golds that seemed to capture the feeling of a storm breaking into sunrise. But Marcus was committed to his performance now. "I mean, who buys this stuff?" He laughed. "It's probably some struggling artist who works at a coffee shop thinking that one day they'll make it big. Completely delusional." Vanessa shifted uncomfortably, but she forced a smile. "Well, someone must like it if it's in a gallery like this." "Please," Marcus scoffed. "These gallery owners are just being charitable. They feel sorry for these wannabe artists who waste their lives chasing impossible dreams instead of getting real jobs. It's actually kind of sad when you think about it." Riley's friend, a woman with short silver hair, whispered something to her. Riley shook her head slightly and whispered back. Marcus couldn't hear what they said, but he saw Riley gently squeeze her friend's arm, as if to say, "It's okay." Her composure only fueled Marcus's need to provoke a reaction. He moved to another painting nearby, Vanessa trailing behind him with increasing reluctance. "God, this whole section is questionable," Marcus announced. "You can always tell when an artist is technically incompetent. They hide behind emotion and expression because they never bothered to develop actual skill. It's laziness disguised as creativity." A few other gallery guests had begun to notice Marcus's loud commentary, exchanging glances. An older gentleman in an expensive suit frowned in their direction. Riley finally turned to leave, walking away with quiet dignity, her friend following close behind. Marcus felt a surge of triumph. "See that?" he murmured to Vanessa. "That's actually my ex-girlfriend, Riley. I spent 2 years listening to her talk about her art career that was never going to happen. Best decision I ever made was ending that relationship." "Marcus," Vanessa said slowly, her perfectly shaped eyebrows drawing together. "That's kind of harsh, don't you think?" "It's honest," Marcus replied. She needed to hear the truth. "I was actually doing her a favor, dating her as long as I did. She should have been thanking me for the exposure to a better lifestyle. But why bring me here if you knew she'd be here?" Vanessa asked. Marcus hadn't actually known Riley would be here, but he wasn't about to admit that. "I wanted to show her what she lost, what a real power couple looks like." Vanessa's expression shifted, something cooling in her eyes. Before she could respond, the gallery lights dimmed slightly, and a distinguished-looking man with silver hair and a sharp suit stepped onto a small platform at the front of the room. "Ladies and gentlemen," the man said in a refined accent, "if I could have your attention, please. I'm Dmitry Volkov, owner of the Meridian Gallery, and I have a very special announcement to make this evening." Marcus barely paid attention, still riding the high of his performance. He didn't notice the way Dmitry's eyes had briefly swept over him with unmistakable disapproval during his earlier tirade. "The revelation, Dmitry." Volkov's voice carried effortlessly through the gallery, commanding attention with its warm authority. "Tonight marks a very special moment for the Meridian Gallery. For 20 years, we have sought to discover and nurture exceptional talent, artists who don't just create beautiful work, but who pour their souls onto canvas." Marcus took a sip of his champagne, only half listening. Vanessa stood beside him, her attention fixed on the gallery owner. "This evening," Dmitry continued, "we have the honor of celebrating an artist whose work has captivated not only myself, but collectors and critics internationally. Her pieces speak of resilience, transformation, and the kind of raw honesty that cannot be taught or faked." Something in the room's energy shifted. Marcus noticed several people glancing in the direction where Riley had been standing earlier. Her collection, Breaking Dawn, will be featured in our main exhibition for the next 3 months, and subsequently will travel to galleries in Paris, London, and Tokyo. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our featured artist for this evening, Riley Morrison. Marcus's champagne glass nearly slipped from his hand. Riley stepped onto the platform, and the room erupted in applause. She looked composed, almost luminous under the gallery lights. Gone was the uncertain woman from his memories. This Riley stood tall, her smile genuine and confident. "No," Marcus breathed. "That's impossible." Vanessa turned to him, her eyes wide. "That's your ex? The one you were just—" "This can't be happening," Marcus muttered, his face draining of color. Dmitry placed a hand on Riley's shoulder. "Riley came to us 18 months ago with a portfolio that simply took my breath away. Her technical skill combined with emotional depth is something we rarely encounter. I knew immediately that we were looking at something special." The crowd applauded again. Marcus felt dozens of eyes turning toward him, recognition dawning on faces that had witnessed his earlier commentary. The older gentleman in the expensive suit was staring at him with undisguised distaste. Riley took the microphone, her voice steady. "Thank you, Dmitry. Thank you all for being here tonight. This moment feels surreal. Not long ago, I was working double shifts at a coffee shop, painting in a tiny apartment, wondering if I was delusional for believing in my work." Marcus felt sick. Those were almost his exact words from earlier. "There were people who told me I was wasting my time," Riley continued, her eyes briefly, almost imperceptibly, flickering in Marcus's direction. People who suggested I should give up, get a real job, stop chasing impossible dreams. And I won't lie. There were nights when I believed them. The room was silent except for Riley's voice. But then I remembered why I create. Not for validation, not for approval, but because art is how I process the world. It's how I transform pain into beauty, confusion into clarity. And if my work resonates with even one person, then every struggle was worth it. Another wave of applause. Dmitri stepped forward again. And resonate it has, he said warmly. I'd like to invite Helena Cross to say a few words. For those who don't know, Ms. Cross is one of the most respected art collectors in the world. A striking woman in her 60s, dressed in an elegant burgundy suit, joined them on the platform. Marcus knew who Helena Cross was. Everyone in this room knew. Her collection was worth hundreds of millions. I've purchased 3 of Riley's pieces, Helena announced, her British accent crisp and clear. And I can tell you, I've been collecting art for 40 years, and rarely have I seen such extraordinary talent in someone so young. The painting, Storm's Promise, which some of you may have noticed in the East Wing, the one with the blues and golds, sold for $85,000. To me, Marcus felt his knees weaken. That was the painting he'd called derivative and amateur. That was the painting he'd mocked mercilessly just 20 minutes ago. Riley's work will only appreciate in value, Helena continued. Mark my words, in 10 years we'll be paying 10 times what we're paying now. I'm honored to support her career and to announce that I'll be sponsoring her upcoming solo exhibition in Paris this spring. The applause was thunderous now. Vanessa took a small step away from Marcus, her face a mixture of shock and embarrassment. Marcus stood frozen, watching Riley smile and shake hands with admirers who rushed to congratulate her. His mind reeled, replaying every cruel word he'd spoken. Every dismissive comment, every moment he'd treated her dreams as worthless delusions. The reversal Riley's speech continued, her voice carrying a grace that made Marcus's earlier cruelty seem even more grotesque in retrospect. I want to thank everyone who supported me during the difficult times. My friend Elena, who's here tonight, let me use her garage as a studio when I couldn't afford one. My mentor, Professor Chen from the community college, who saw potential in me when I couldn't see it in myself. She paused, her expression softening. And I especially want to thank those who doubted me. Because your doubt became my fuel. Every time someone suggested I was wasting my life, I painted harder. Every time someone implied I wasn't good enough, I pushed myself to improve. So in a strange way, thank you, the crowd murmured appreciatively. Several people were now openly staring at Marcus, having clearly connected the dots between his earlier commentary and Riley's words. Dmitri returned to the microphone. Riley's collection explores themes of transformation and resilience. Each piece represents a different stage of emerging from darkness into light. The technical mastery alone would be impressive, but combined with such emotional authenticity, it's simply breathtaking. Helena Cross nodded enthusiastically. I've already contacted 3 other major collectors who will want to view her work. Riley, my dear, I hope you're prepared for your life to change dramatically. Riley smiled, a genuine warmth in her expression. I've learned that life changes when we least expect it. Sometimes painfully, sometimes beautifully. I'm just grateful to be here. As she stepped down from the platform, people swarmed around her. Critics, collectors, and admirers all wanted a moment of her time. Marcus watched as she handled each interaction with genuine warmth and humility, nothing like the insecure woman he remembered, or perhaps she'd never been insecure. Perhaps he'd just needed to see her that way. Vanessa turned to Marcus, her voice cold. I need some air. Vanessa, wait. That woman you just spent 20 minutes humiliating? She's the guest of honor. She's wildly successful. And you treated her like garbage to impress me. Vanessa's perfectly glossed lips pressed into a thin line. What does that say about you, Marcus? I didn't know. That makes it worse, not better, Vanessa interrupted. You didn't insult her because you knew who she was. You insulted her because you thought she was nobody, because you thought it was safe to punch down. She shook her head. I've seen enough. She walked away, leaving Marcus standing alone in the middle of the gallery. Around him, conversations buzzed with excitement about Riley's work. The older gentleman in the expensive suit approached, his expression stern. "Young man, I witnessed your display earlier. Appalling behavior. Riley Morrison is a remarkable talent, and your comments revealed far more about your character than hers." He paused. "I'm Jonathan Pierce, by the way, Vanessa's father. I think you can see yourself out." Marcus felt his face burn with shame. He tried to catch Riley's eye, thinking perhaps he could apologize, explain somehow, but she was surrounded by admirers and never once looked his way. Her friend Elena, however, met his gaze with a knowing smile that said everything. Karma had done its work. He slipped out of the gallery into the cool night air, the sound of celebration and Riley's success following him out the door. The aftermath, 3 weeks had passed, and Marcus couldn't escape Riley's success. Her face appeared in art magazines, on social media, in the lifestyle sections of major newspapers. "Rising star Riley Morrison," one headline read. "From coffee shop to international galleries, an artist's journey," proclaimed another. Vanessa had blocked him on all platforms after posting a cryptic message about recognizing red flags and surrounding yourself with genuine people. Her followers had quickly pieced together what happened, and Marcus found himself the subject of whispered conversations at every social gathering he attended. His business associates had started treating him differently too. David Huang had canceled their lunch meeting with a terse email. Others seemed cordial but distant, as if reassessing what kind of person he really was. Marcus sat alone in his pristine apartment, scrolling through images of Riley's Paris exhibition opening. She looked radiant, confident, surrounded by people who genuinely celebrated her talent. Helena Cross stood beside her in several photos, clearly having become both patron and friend. There was a picture of Riley with a distinguished-looking man, a fellow artist according to the caption, both laughing at something off-camera. She looked genuinely happy in a way Marcus couldn't remember seeing when they were together. Had he ever really supported her? Or had he just tolerated her passion while secretly believing she'd fail? The truth settled over him like a heavy blanket. He'd needed to believe Riley was chasing an impossible dream because it made him feel superior. Her success hadn't just proved him wrong about her talent. It had exposed something ugly in himself that he'd spent years avoiding. His phone buzzed. Another cancellation, this time from a networking event. The host apologized, but mentioned they were trying to maintain a certain atmosphere. Marcus understood. He'd become the cautionary tale, the example of how not to treat people. Meanwhile, Riley's star continued to rise. Her second collection had already sold out before the exhibition even opened. Art schools were inviting her to speak. Young artists were citing her as an inspiration, not just for her work, but for her perseverance and grace. Marcus opened his laptop and typed out an email to Riley for the 10th time that week. Once again, he stared at the blinking cursor, unable to find words adequate for the apology she deserved. What could he possibly say? "Sorry I tried to humiliate you to impress someone else. Sorry I spent years dismissing your dreams." He deleted the draft. Some damage couldn't be undone with words. Some bridges, once burned, were meant to stay ashes. The final image on his screen was from Riley's interview in Art Forum magazine. The reporter had asked if she had any regrets about her journey. Riley's response had been characteristic. "Every challenge taught me something. Every setback made me stronger. I wouldn't change a thing, because everything led me here." Marcus closed his laptop and looked around his expensive, empty apartment. He'd gotten everything he thought he wanted: success, status, the right image. But sitting alone with his shame, he understood the difference between looking successful and actually being the kind of person worth admiring. Riley had taught him one final lesson. Though she'd never know it, dignity and character couldn't be faked, and karma always kept score. Outside his window, the city glittered with life and possibility. Somewhere out there, Riley was living her dream, surrounded by people who'd believed in her when it mattered. And Marcus was learning that sometimes the person you try to diminish ends up showing you exactly who you really are. The end.